Hey, this is Earl Slick, and you're listening to The Vinyl Guide. Make sure you stay tuned in because you'll be hearing my new album, Fistful of Devils, pretty soon.
Well, thank you so much, Earl. And yes, everyone can hear the new album, Fistful of Devils, right now. And let me tell you, it is phenomenal. And as you could well tell, Earl is my guest today here on The Vinyl Guide. We're going to talk all about his new LP, Fistful of Devils, as well as hear many stories of his time playing with the likes of David Bowie, John Lennon. We'll talk about Earl's early records, his vinyl memories, and lots more. Earl is a very, very cool guy. I met him down in Sydney a few years back with Angelo Moore. We were hanging out. They were in town doing some Bowie tribute at the Sydney Opera House. And this man is as real as they come. What an outstanding career, and Earl's new album is well worth checking out. Fistful of Devils is available on all streaming services right now. Crank that sucker up anytime, but if you want it on vinyl, and I suspect you will, there are only 1,000 units pressed, and they can be had at Schnitzel Records or schnitzel.co.uk. Get up there quick, grab yours now, because once they're gone, they're gone. That's schnitzel.co.uk. And hey, if you enjoy the Vinyl Guide podcast, please subscribe or follow us on your podcast app. And please consider becoming a patron of the show at patreon.com/vinylguide. I'm going to give all the patrons a shout out at the end of the show, but we certainly welcome our newest patrons, Shane Robertson, Jed Bedouin, Mark Valoria, Matt Bullis, Katrina, Jay, and Tabitha Torrance. To the people I just named and all the other show patrons, I give a huge thanks because you all help keep this show going. And as you know, I like to put extra stuff up at patreon.com/vinylguide, like extended interviews, secret episodes, early access to interviews, etc. So if you could spare $5 or $10 a month or more for your buddy Nate here, please head up to patreon.com/vinylguide, get all the extras, and a huge thanks in advance for your support. Alrighty, enough jibber jabber out of me. Let's get a fistful of stories from Mr. Earl Slick. Mr. Earl.
Hey, man.
You're driving, huh?
You know what? The Wi-Fi at the place is just for shit today, so I'm sitting out in front of the public library in the parking lot.
Well, fair enough. You got to do what you got to do to get that juice from the sky, right?
You know what? You don't get to do like an interview in the parking lot with the police right around the corner behind me, sitting there.
Well, let me know if you get hungry. We'll just go through a drive-through.
Oh, I've already got a snack.
Excellent, man. Well, great to see you.
Yeah, man.
Man, I got to tell you, this new album, Fistful of Devils, phenomenal. It's career-defining, man. I love it.
Thank you. It's you never know when people hear these things what they're going to think, you know. So it's really nice to hear.
Here's what really struck me about this album. And look, I love the blues. I love blues music, but a lot of blues albums tend to follow a very similar pattern, right? You know, and I can almost tell where the musician's going to be going. There's a bit of a blueprint that's just been put there for decades and decades. But this one it zigs where I expect it to zag. You know, my brain's kind of thinking it's going this way, and all of a sudden it catches me by surprise and pulls me in a different direction. I think that's the one thing that I noticed right away is it's not often in life that you get these sort of surprises, especially out of art. And to me, that's always a signal of good art is when it knows where it thinks you're going to go and then does something different.
Absolutely. The one thing about that is that it wasn't until we finished mixing and everything that I realized that a couple of those songs really, like in the middle of the song, it just goes to Mars. It's like, what's that?
Mm-hmm. How long have these songs been percolating with you?
There's three of them that were started 30 years ago.
Okay.
And a buddy of mine that I recorded them with, he dug them out one day, and then we talked about me actually making a record. Two of them were just little bits, like literally just an idea. Mm-hmm. And then there was one called Bad Brew. That was written in its entirety back then. Right. The rest of them are all were written within probably a month or 2 month period before we recorded.
All right. So rather recent. Do you find yourself being inspired by things like COVID, for example? Did that play into the recording or the psyche of the material?
Well, this was recorded 6 years ago. And
okay.
And you know what? I was starting to get really busy, and my then manager was, shopping a deal, and then, things are different than they used to be. And I said, you know what? Fuck this record deal shit right now. I'm just going to go out on the road, let that thing sit there. And sooner or later, somebody's going to come by that wants it, and then we'll put it out. And if nobody comes by, I'm happy with the work, and it can just sit on a hard drive as far as I'm concerned. And then Oliver Guyowitz from the Schnitzel Record Company contacted me last fall out of nowhere. He says, do you have any unreleased material? I said, well, I do. And that's how this happened.
Now, who's on the album besides yourself, obviously?
Okay. Lee John, the drummer, is my son.
Okay.
Oh, God, the piano player, Al Mars, is a fucking truck driver. And I got introduced through a friend. I was looking for a piano player to try this guy. And he's like Nicky Hopkins come back from the dead.
Yeah.
He's great. And then Freddie Villano, who's played with a number of people. Actually, Freddie played more in medley bands, but he had a really good funk feel going on in there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much it. Oh, and Reeves, Gabrels, played a lot of that ambient stuff.
Okay. I imagine just with the energy of the album, much of it was recorded live.
All of it was recorded live.
Okay. And is this a group that you would play with maybe occasionally at a bar or a club, or was it?
Oh, absolutely. Once the smoke clears and there's gigs to play, because everybody's based on the East Coast, I could easily grab the guys and do some gigs. My sights are really set on the UK right now because that's really where I've been spending most of my time the last 5 or 6 years. With me and Glenn Matlock, I've been doing a lot of gigs, and I just find that there's just more for me to do there. To bring that band over there would be cost prohibitive.
Yeah, we had Glenn on the show recently, and his new album, his material is fantastic.
Yeah, we did that to December right before the shit hit the fan. So,
And how have you held up since the shit hit the fan?
I've been coming back to life the last month or so, but there has been some dark ass shit, man. And I'm not one of these people that creates out of insanity, I don't do So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure like everybody else, I've had my moments where what the fuck is happening to me? You get depressed, you start, then you're thinking, well, will I ever play again? And your brain just goes off in 100 directions, but, with things moving ahead, I'm getting excited again, which hasn't happened a whole lot during that pandemic. So I feel really good about it now.
Now, I got to notice that while we're talking here, you're having yourself a cigarette, and you've done that for quite some time. So, whenever you hear about COVID, if you were to catch it, you may be in one of those high-risk groups. Were you taking extra precautions and everything throughout the last year?
Hell yeah. I mean, the only time I've been going out is if it's necessary. I was very diligent about who I was being around. I mean, if I had delivery guys come to the house, if they weren't wearing a mask, I'd tell them to go away. It's like, take it seriously, dude.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So with this album, you're pretty much the boss of this album. In the past, you've been not the boss. You've been serving the boss.
Right.
What role do you like better? What role fits comfortable, at least at this part of your life?
Either or, really. It's two different mindsets. If I'm feeling like when we did this record, I picked the right guys that I knew could bring something to the table, not just as players, but, they're themselves, the essence of the guys. And we had a blast, and I'm very good at organizing all that stuff. And I got Mario J. McNulty, who co-produced and engineered for me. I had a great studio up in Rhinebeck, New York, where we all stayed. They had a big farmhouse that we stayed in. So we basically roll out of bed in the morning and coffee up, and we'd be playing. It really, that's really a great way to do it. So on the other hand, if I'm doing a gig and I'm the sideman, which is pretty much what I've done a majority of my career, if it's with the right people, I really like it.
Mm-hmm.
I loved, I don't necessarily, in a live gig environment, I don't necessarily cherish being the boss or the front guy. I like that role of the right-hand man thing, because I do it. It comes naturally to me.
When you're playing alongside someone like a Bowie, how do you share the stage? Because he will be obviously moving around as he feels like it. You have to just be aware of him and stay on different sides of the stage, or eye contact for when it's time to come together. How does that silent communication work?
What's really funny is with David, we could read each other's minds and feel each other out without eye contact. I could tell when he was going to step back and it was time for me to step up. Mm-hmm. I could tell when it was time to interact. It was, with him, it was all instinct, and it worked like a charm. Mm. It wasn't like, Slicky, you better stay away from the front of the stage kind of thing like that. It was, he wanted me to do that, because in my mind, the way a good frontman works is he knows instinctively that if he's up on the stage the entire show right up front, it doesn't have as much impact as if he maybe steps back and lets the band come up front a little bit. Because then when he comes back, it's almost like he's reintroduced himself to the audience. I don't know if I explained that
right. It's like refreshing
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So he could do that several times a gig. And
right. Yeah. And it gives him time to just step back. There'd be times where he literally just walk off the stage and leave me there. Mm-hmm. And I knew what he was going to do and when he was going to do it.
So you were his right-hand man for many years and many albums. But joining the band, you joined with some pretty seasoned players. Mike Garson, Ainsley Dunbar had been with him for a while. Was it easy being the new guy?
Actually, it wasn't Ainsley. It was Tony Newman.
Okay. All right.
From Jeff Beck's band. Then it was Herbie Flowers and Garson, Michael Kamen, David Sanborn. And I had worked with Kamen and Sanborn before that in a band. Mm-hmm. And it was the way I was when I first joined the band is I really looked up to these guys. So I watched everything they did. I listened to what they said. As far as I was concerned, I was like the new kid that needed to learn some shit.
Okay, you were absorbing everything.
I was a sponge, man.
What was your first hard lesson that you learned?
Christ. The hard lessons that were learned so long after the beginning, because all of the screw-ups just caught up with me after a while. And most of it was letting substances get in the way of shit. Mm. That was the hardest. That was a big lesson.
Okay. Yeah, that was I think the time you joined the band, right after Diamond Dogs, I believe, that era, every time I see a picture of Bowie in that era, he always looks a little bit more unhealthy than he did in other eras of his career.
Oh, man, he was in bad shape. None of us were in great shape, but he was really in bad shape. Mm-hmm. But somehow, we pulled that Diamond Dogs tour off somehow.
Yeah. That's the one that they used for David Live, right?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. There was a rumor, confirm with me if this is true or not, that for the recording of that album, the band refused to take the stage until there was a suitable agreement regarding.
Yeah. What happened? This is funny because I was new. I didn't know what was going on, and we weren't told we were being recorded. And when we got to sound check in Philly, Herbie Flowers, who was seasoned, noticed that there were extra microphones. Back then, when you recorded live, there was one mic that went to front of house and one mic that went to the recording truck. Now they don't do that anymore, Mm-hmm. But he saw that. And so the management sent us, they stuck a letter under our hotel room doors with this fee agreement, which was pathetic. I didn't know. So, Herbie got everybody together and he was the spokesman. And he said, until we get an agreement, we ain't going on. And the shit hit the fan. Royally hit the fan.
Okay. And you're the new guy. You're just trying to keep your head below radar.
Yeah, the way I look at it, let these old motherfuckers figure it out, and I'll do whatever they do.
Okay. And how close to showtime did the arrangement get finally hammered out?
20 minutes.
Okay. And in terms of that recording, were there many overdubs? Do you recall doing many overdubs, or was it largely taken off the live tapes?
I didn't do any.
Okay.
From what I know, the overdubs that were done were on some of the vocals because of mic dropouts.
Got it. Okay. Now, Michael Kamen, he's like your mentor. He's a bit of your guardian angel, it sounds like, for your career.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, no doubt. I met Michael through a mutual friend, and Michael just saw something in me, and he kind of mentored me along the way, and he's the one that suggested to David that I got an audition.
Mm-hmm. Now, were you involved in the band Trax?
Jesus Christ, where did you find that?
I do my research.
You know what? That band was two trust fund kids, and they had gotten this is a really weird thing. It was a label. I think it was through Ringling Brothers.
Circus.
Right? Yeah. But it was the parent company was Capitol. So that is the first record that the name Earl Slick ever appeared on.
Okay. And what do you recall about making that? It was just some trust fund kids that were just buying studio time, paying musicians, and living out their fantasy?
They had money, I think, themselves, and then they had a backer. And actually, if I remember correctly, Andy, who was the main guy, was a halfway decent songwriter. And you know who else was on that record was Roy Bittan.
Oh, okay.
Springsteen's band.
Oh, far out. Okay. So did this band play live at all, or was it just a recording gig? No,
we did the recording, and they were sporadic, like college gigs.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say that we actually toured for real. There were a few gigs here and there. So it really wasn't. It wasn't a band per se. It was just the two guys, and we were the side guys.
And you mentioned that's the first record that the name Earl Slick is on.
Yeah.
Are you on any records prior to that under a different name?
There were that was actually the first actual release thing I ever did. I had done some sessions with Michael Kamen before that, that were some unreleased stuff. And I did a recording session when I was like 18. I was playing the backup band for a road touring company of the musical Hair.
Okay.
And I remember going into Bell Studios in New York with Heather McRae and Otis Young, who were original cast members, and recording Easy to Be Hard before Three Dog Night did it. And theirs wasn't released, but Three Dog Nights obviously was.
Right.
So I'm on the original recording of that song.
Amazing. But that was never released, or at least at the time, no?
No, it was never released.
Okay. And you ever record any kind of one-off 45s back in the day? Early bands?
No, because the only way you would do that, really, you needed a label. Like now people make records in their basement and they say they got a record coming out, which I can't take terribly seriously. No, you just didn't. If you were going to be making a record that was going to be released, there was a label involved somehow. Mm-hmm. So no, I hadn't done anything yet.
Okay. Yeah, we've got a lot of folks on the show who've done private presses, where them and the other members of the band pooled their money together, or someone sponsored 100 records or something crazy like that.
Right. I mean, no disrespect to those guys, because times are a lot different, but back then it didn't exist. Not to mention is as a guitarist, that's what I was. Mm-hmm. I wasn't an engineer. I didn't know a damn thing. When I walked in a recording studio, it looked like a spaceship to me. And to me, that guy behind the Star Trek board, he did that, and we played.
Fair enough. Everyone plays their role.
Yeah.
Now, it sounds like the Beatles on Ed Sullivan was clearly a turning point for you, as it was so many others. Aside from the Beatles, what record changed your life?
We'll be back after these messages.
Well, hey there, you record nerds. Before you drop any dough on eBay or Discogs, make sure to search for your wish list at AudiofileUSA.com. AudiofileUSA.com has over 42,000 titles in stock and only sells excellent and near-mint vinyl records. Many are decades old and still in original shrink wrap. Dig into audiophileUSA.com, search by artist, genre, even search by record label, and dig for the deals. AudiophileUSA.com is a family-owned and operated business, and all their records are damn gorgeous. That's AudiophileUSA.com, home of the Holy Grails. And next time you're in a record store, ask them for the Groove Washer by name. The Groove Washer is the best vinyl record cleaner out on the market. I use it daily, and my records look and sound their very best. There is no way I'd put any no-name cleaner fluid on my records. Only the best for cleaning, listening, and long-term storage. Groove Washer is safe, proven, and industry recognized. If your local record shop doesn't carry the Groove Washer, then go to groovewasher.com and use discount code VinylGuide10. We much prefer you buy one from a record shop, but if they don't have it, go to groovewasher.com and use discount code VinylGuide10.
Now we return to the program already in progress.
No limits.
Now, it sounds like the Beatles on Ed Sullivan was clearly a turning point for you, as it was so many others. Aside from the Beatles, what record changed your life?
The one that really did it was the Stones' first record.
Okay.
Which was in the States, it was titled Rolling Stones English Newest Hit Makers. And Not Fade Away was on that. There was some Chuck Berry covers on that. Mm-hmm. That was the one. That's really when I knew that's what I wanted to do. The Beatles got my attention, and the Stones kept my attention.
Now, back in the day, did you have? Were you able to get records pretty regularly?
Oh yeah, I mean every dime that I had, and I used to buy a lot of singles. I still have the singles, so every time I heard something I liked, I'd go buy a single, and if I liked the B-side, I'd go buy the album. Okay. And most of it, to be honest with you, every time the Stones released something, I bought it. And then because of the Stones, I started buying Chuck Berry records and old blues records because of them.
And you still have all those records, you said?
The vinyl over the years, for moving in this, but I have the singles.
Mm-hmm. And do you still listen to vinyl? Is that still something you pull out the record player, put something on the record player regularly?
And I think when the smoke clears, I'll probably pick up a turntable because this is the first vinyl I've released in a really long time, and I'm going to want to play it.
Well, the way I understand that Fistful of Devils has been manufactured would lend itself to probably one of the best Sonic albums of the year. I mean, produced by Mario McNulty. It's been mastered by Dave Molnar. Cut in Germany, 180-gram double vinyl, and there's only 1,000 available. So once it's gone, it's gone. So the way that I understand that this piece of vinyl was produced is really going to lend itself well to the content.
Oh, I know it is. I mean, you could just tell when you pick up the damn thing. It weighs as much as 5 albums.
What do you reckon is the best blues album of all time?
Holy shit. I don't think there is one. I'll listen to Jimmy Reed top to bottom. I'll listen to Lightning Hopkins top to bottom. I'll listen to Muddy, mm-hmm. And they all have equal merit. I don't know if there's a lot of people would automatically answer that with Robert Johnson.
Okay. And
that's a very, very important piece of work. As little of it, I think there was only 27 or 28 songs recorded,
something like that,
in a hotel in Texas somewhere. My favorite ones, they fluctuate from time to time. I'll go on a Lightning Hopkins kick for a while, then a Jimmy Reed kick, and then I'm listening to Howlin',
Mm-hmm. So if an alien species came down to the planet and you wanted to explain to them what the blues was, is there a go-to record you would pick up?
Yeah, I would get a compilation of about the best blues guys and say, this is the shit.
Listening to your album, it reminded me quite a bit of Magic Sam and what he did with West Side Soul, how that was just such a milestone in blues. That's what your album reminded me of, Fistful of Devils. Do you pull much inspiration from Magic Sam?
No.
No? Okay.
No, I mean, the inspiration I'm getting, to be honest, the songwriting part, I don't even know where the hell that came from. There may be some little bits and pieces that there's a thing called Black on there. that I think it's the second track. That was inspired by a scene in David Lynch's Fire Walk With Me movie. There's this really sick ass bar scene, and Angelo Badalamenti does all his music, and it's this sleazy down tempo thing, and that kind of gave me the idea for that. I kind of let the songs, they kind of wrote them, and I did write about 3 or 4 of them with the truck driving piano player, because so damn good. We sat in the room, we knocked off those songs in like a day.
Now, being an instrumental song, obviously you have to give them titles.
Yeah.
How do you come up with the titles for something that doesn't have words, but was created maybe in a collaboration with someone else?
A couple of the titles came of the stuff that I pulled from 30 years ago. They might have come from the co-writer, Patrick Shunk. And then stuff like Black, I was going through, when the idea came to me, I was in a real, not depressed, just in a shitty mood for a couple of, and that's where that came out of. That's why in the middle of that, you'll notice that the whole thing changes into this like almost 50s thing, all in a major key. And it gets really happy. And then all of a sudden, it gets all dark again. It's kind of where I was at the time. I was bouncing all over the place. So it fit I was in a black mood. So there it is,
Okay.
It's usually with the titles, I'll go back and think about what my frame of mind was when the music came to me. And that's how I'll title it.
Okay. And when you play the music, do those memories come back? Are those memories indelibly attached to those licks and riffs?
Mm-mm.
No.
The only memory that's attached to the thing is there's an acoustic thing called Emerald. And if you listen to it in the headphones, at the very beginning, there's this weird noise. It's my dog panting. My dog was sitting on my feet when I did the acoustic track, and I left it on there.
Oh, that's great. I also enjoyed Vanishing Point. Tell me the story of Vanishing Point.
Vanishing Point was written, the little hooky bit in that was written 30 years ago, and it's all we had. So I played it for Al, the truck driving piano player, and I said, you know what, let's develop this thing. So he came up with some alternate things, and and we put it together in the course of a few hours. He's good at going off in weird directions.
While you're recording this, how open are you to input from other people? Do you step into it with a bit of a vision of where you want to go and pretty much stick to that? Or are you open for suggestions, not only from other musicians, but from the engineer, from the producer?
I wouldn't see the point of bringing them in if I wasn't able to pull out of their, you know what I mean? Sure, I would say, okay, this one needs to be a little edgy, and then I'd shut up and let them play.
Okay.
And then Mario, who's really a good co-producer, would say, Slicky, I think the tempo should change, or maybe he would have ideas, a lot of ideas. So everybody would discuss the thing. So it wasn't like I laid anything out.
When you were a sideman, when you were working with John Lennon, were you able to contribute to what was happening quite a bit? Was he open to your suggestions, things that you brought to the table?
Absolutely. I was the only guy in that band that couldn't read music. And that's specifically why I was there. We wanted one guy that was going to be, let's say, a little bit of, they used to refer to me as the wild card. And me and John, we thought a lot alike on guitar, because we both really were hardcore, coming from the 50s, Chuck Berry and all the rest of it. So basically he would, he just let me do what I did.
Okay. Could he read music himself, or I thought maybe he... No? Okay.
Need a clue.
Okay. He need a brother in simpatico.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, when you were working with John, there were some of the tracks that you did that ended up on Double Fantasy. He also tried with a few other musicians, like the guys from Cheap Trick came in and did some. Were you aware that there were multiple sessions, multiple versions of the songs happening at the same time?
I think I found out about Cheap Trick about a couple of weeks into the sessions, and basically the reason that they didn't do the whole record is it just sounded like Cheap Trick too much.
Was the name Double Fantasy already being discussed early in the sessions?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
From what I understand, it's supposed to be a 2-album, one album in October, or one album, and the second one in like January, February, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the plan is that we had already we recorded that, and then the follow-up Milk and Honey all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It was all done straight through, and then John and Yoko picked the ones that were going to be Double Fantasy, and then the plan was to go back in. John was still writing, so we were going to go back in January with some new songs, and then finish up the ones that we started when we did the main sessions. And that was going to be released as we were getting ready to go on the road, which we had planned to do in 1981.
Right. So you guys had discussed going on the road, a tour.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Matter of fact, the last in-person conversation I had with John is he had asked me if I was up for it. I said, are you fucking kidding me? I said, only thing is I just signed a record contract with Columbia, and I'm going to have to figure things out. He says, well, what if I just called and I figured it out? I said, do it. And he did.
Okay. So he made the call to get support for you taking a break from that if needed.
Exactly. Just to postpone my thing when I went out with him, which any record company would have a brain would, of course, think that was a good idea, right?
Yeah. Now, when the Double Fantasy recording started, there's a story about you going in and John remember meeting you, but you didn't remember meeting John. Yeah.
That would be a true story. And he was convinced and I was convinced, but it wasn't matching up very well because he really thought that we had met during the Young American sessions.
Right.
But I didn't remember it. And he thought that was just hysterically funny. So every once in a while he'd needle me about it, and we'd have a laugh.
Did you ever figure out where that notion may have come from, or is
it? Oh, yeah, because we're both playing on Fame.
Right. But not at the same time.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't answer that question. The 70s is a bit of a blur. It's a big blur.
So you may have been playing on Fame with John Lennon, or maybe not. You can't remember.
Exactly. I know he's on it because he wrote it. I know I'm on it because I played on it, but I don't know if we were both there at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you started recording Double Fantasy, from what I understand, all the sessions were in secret. John and Yoko were searching for a record label. And then at some point when they made the deal with Geffen, all of a sudden the recording of the sessions was leaked. Obviously, everyone then knew that John was recording a new album. Is that your recollection, kind of how it strung together?
The only thing I remember about label is that it didn't even come up until we were really far into the recording.
Mm-hmm.
And we were very quiet about it. And I don't know how the hell nobody figured it out because we were going in and out of the Hit Factory every day for months.
Right.
I think because John had been so under the radar at the time that the press and anybody, they really didn't put two and two together.
Okay. And was Season of Glass being produced at the same time in tandem, or was that clearly after John had gone?
No, Season of Glass was recorded in, I think we started it at the end of February, early March of 81. And to me, the way I viewed that was Yoko's therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Because he brought in the same band. The only difference was that Jack Douglas wasn't there because he had been already involved in another project. And it was a last minute thing. It wasn't like we spoke about it months in advance. I think I got a call and a week later we were in the studio with Phil Spector, which was a fucking unbelievable train wreck.
Tell me about Phil during those sessions.
I was so excited. I'm going, wow, I'm going to work with Phil Spector. How cool is this, right? And we get in there and it was the Twilight Zone. I mean, the guy was walking around with a Dirty Harry 357 and a shoulder holster. He had a bodyguard the size of Andre the Giant. He spoke to all of us in third person through the engineer. And the control room was blacked out, so we couldn't see anybody in there. It was bad. And then one day, about 2 weeks in, me and Yoko got to the studio at the same time. We get in the elevator, and I said, "What time's he getting here today?" She knew what I was talking. She goes, "He's not going to be in today." I said, "Well, when's he coming in?" He goes, "He's not." And that was the end of the conversation.
Okay. All right.
Good.
Yeah. My next question was going to be, what did Yoko see in Phil to bring him into that session?
I think what she saw, pardon me, I'm eating one of my snacks here.
It's all good.
I think what she saw was, as with all of us doing the record, a connection to John.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what she saw.
Okay.
Because his involvement with the last Beatle record and John's earlier stuff.
Mm-hmm. And she'd gotten very comfortable with the rest of the band during the Double Fantasy session. So it made sense to have you and everyone else that was there for Season of Glass. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because that's what we would have been doing anyway had not John, had not been killed. It would have been everybody back in together anyway.
Yeah. Do you know what some of the changes that were discussed for the Milk and Honey material would have been?
I think what we would have been doing was, because when John and Yoko picked out the songs that were going to become Double Fantasy, we went in and did all overdubs and finished it up.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of it, we were going to readdress in January of 81 and, just continue working on them. So there was, I think we would have been, the method would have been the same thing we had done on Double Fantasy. We would have just gone in, worked on overdubbing on the ones we recorded, and he had new ones to add to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, was it called Milk and Honey at the time?
No, and it didn't come out till a couple of years later when I guess Yoko decided to get it out. And rightfully so, they did very little overdubbing on that.
Right.
That's all live. It's all the stuff that we'd done live.
Mm-hmm. Was there a working title for what that would have been? Or was everyone just saying the second album, the next album?
Yeah, the album the next album.
And you weren't in New York on December 8th? No? Okay.
No, I was on the West Coast at the time, and I was actually planning to fly, and I did fly into New York about a week later. That was my plan at the time, to go spend the holidays with my New York family and, and then stay there.
Mm-hmm.
And then go into the studio right after Christmas, like right after the 1st.
Mm. Okay. So you weren't part of Yoko's recording session the very next day?
What recording session the very next day?
Oh, she recorded some vocals for I Don't Know Why the day after John's death.
Oh, I didn't know that. I mean, the last thing that I was aware of that was recorded and worked on was the night before, and the same night they were still finishing off Walking on Thin Ice.
Okay. You were in that session?
Yeah, we recorded that that was all part of the Double Fantasy recordings.
Okay.
And I had spoken to John the night before on the 7th. He had stopped over at the studio, and I called the Hit Factory or the record plant, wherever, to talk to one of the engineers there. And John just happened to be there, so he jumped on the phone and we had a short conversation.
Got it. Okay. And it was between the 7th and the 8th where he called the Capitol executive. At some point in his last day, he did you that solid.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, he did it before that, because that solid was done. Because when we finished Double Fantasy, I went back to the West Coast. So that would have been like September or something. As soon as when we finished. So the conversation we had in person about the tour was the last day that we were recording on Double Fantasy. And I don't remember when that was. It had to have been either late summer, early fall.
Got it. Apologies. I've got my timeline screwed up.
Oh, you know what? I was there, and my timelines ain't so good either.
Earl, thank you so much for coming on the show. Couple more questions if you have a few minutes.
Where am I going? my schedule's been open for the last year.
I thought you may get hungry and go through the Carl's Jr. drive-through. So it's interesting. You stayed in the orbit of Bowie for some time. You left the band in the late 70s, but then came back to work on the Heathen tour and the Reality album. Did you stay in touch with David throughout that time?
When I left the band in 76, we didn't speak again until 83 when I did the Serious Moonlight tour. And then after we did that, I got involved in some other projects. I did the Phantom Rocker and Slick. He was doing what he was doing. And then in late 99, out of nowhere, he contacted me again. And then from that point to the end, I was there.
Right.
Everything except Black Star, because he didn't use us. He didn't use the normal band on that one. We wouldn't have been right for that record, you know. So the last record, the real Bowie record with the band, was the next day. So, you know, once we started working again at the end of 99, I was there all the way through to the end.
Right. Now, in the years in between those albums, did you stay in touch? Were there demos, or did he pretty much call you when he was ready to go and you came in the studio and did your thing?
From 99 on, once we started working together again, we did stay in touch in between things. It's something that we never really did before. But I think with the internet now, with being able to email people and us not being a toxic waste dump of cocaine, it made it a little easier to communicate.
That seems to be a fitting description.
It's as accurate as it gets.
And did he share those sort of demos with you early on, or were they pretty well realized when you went in the studio and you came in and did your parts?
I never got a demo from him in my life. Mm-hmm. Everything that we ever did, I showed up at the studio. Sometimes the songs were written, sometimes they were half written, and that to me is that was the best way for me and him to work, because he'll just come up with ideas out of the blue, and I'm at my best when you just throw me a curveball in the studio. It makes me, you know, it hits my instincts, and I'll just go with that. And that's one of the things that working with him that I thought was brilliant was that the way we worked together was really good. Mm-hmm. It was all very spontaneous, and I just did, a friend of mine, another Brit, is making a record now. And obviously I couldn't fly over to do it right now. And we both preferred to not do it remotely, you know, sending files back and forth. And so he sent me a thing to listen to, and I did some overdubs on it. And I would have felt better had we just gotten together in the studio and just done it off the cuff without hearing anything. I don't even like to listen to demos ahead of time.
Okay.
The demos that I did for Devils were like, you know, I would write a tune and I would just tell the engineer, you know what, press record, and just me and Al would do it, and with no band, it would just capture, so we wouldn't forget it. They weren't really demos per se. They were just little, like, you know, writing notes on a notepad.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you like to just, you know, rely on your instinct when it comes to those sort of moments.
If you give me too much time to think when I'm recording, we're going to waste the whole day. If I walk in, if my instincts hit me, you'll get it in a couple of takes.
Right.
If they don't hit me, we'll just do it another day. I'm not good at just conjuring stuff up by thinking about it. If something flies in and out of the radar, then it's usually the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you still get the goosebumps when you get those moments?
Yeah, sometimes I do. Sometimes I'll get a buzz going, wow, okay, I don't know where that came from, but it's the right thing. Mm-hmm. You know, it's that old Keith story about writing Satisfaction in the middle of the night and recording it and not even remembering until he played his tape back the next day, you know? Yeah. They come out of nowhere. I don't know where this shit comes from.
Yeah, there's that time just before one goes to sleep. And I found it for myself, that tends to be my most creative period, is when my brain switches off of reality, but it isn't quite in a dream state.
Yeah. I'll do that where I'll get like melodies in my head as I'm falling asleep. And my method is, if I still remember them when I wake up, they were good enough. And if I don't, they sucked.
was David always in the process of recording and an album just organically emerged, or was it an approach of like a willful recording, a set number of songs with the intent of releasing them?
A bit of both, like a record like Let's Dance, that was definitely planned and all that.
Yeah.
When we went in to do Station, and Young Americans, he really had a mind on to make a soul record. When we went in to do Station, there was no template. He just said, we're going to start recording. And we just went. And so we went into a rehearsal place for like 2 or 3 days and batted around some vague ideas that he had. And then we went into the studio and just started putting it together.
Okay.
So there was no go-to method, really.
Just like David himself, each experience was unique.
Everything was a curveball.
For the next day, this was after his heart attack, after his health issues had started. Were you surprised that he was doing a new album?
No, he never surprised me because that's what he did. He surprised us all the time. So being surprised isn't a surprise anymore when you know he's going to surprise you. If that makes an ounce of sense.
Yeah.
He worked on that record for a couple of years on and off. And as far as his health goes, I don't know if he knew he was ill. I sure as hell didn't know because we recorded. I was in there like for the last week of the recording was 2012 in July, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So he may or may not have known he was ill. I didn't know. I have no idea.
Was it clear that there would be no tour?
Very, because we had there was one track on there called I think We Will Set the World on Fire. It's a real up-tempo rocker. And we cut the track when we were sitting in the control room, and he goes, Slicky, man, that's really a good live track. So I looked at him, and before I could say anything, he said, don't even think about it. So that took care of the touring idea. And I knew he meant it.
Were you part of the tour when he had the heart attack on stage?
I was standing right next to him when it happened.
What was your experience in that?
It was weird because I don't think he didn't realize what was going on. So I signaled over to the tour manager, and they came on and they dragged him off. And then he came back on again. I thought maybe he thought he was having a heartburn or something, and he made it through about a half a song, and that was it. And then we took about 3 days off, and we did the Hurricane Festival in Germany, and he looked dreadful before we did the show. And the weather sucked, but that way, I mean, it was a huge festival, kind of a muddy Glastonbury thing. We were in a tent, and it didn't look very well. And it was raining, and we did the show. And as ill as he looked, he kicked ass. And we finished the show. So the last song that I ever did live with him was Heroes. And yeah, it's the Heroes from the 2004 Hurricane Festival in Germany. And we went back to Hamburg after that, and we just sat around for a couple of days, and nobody was saying anything. We were just having days off, going out to dinner. Saw David. Little did we know that right after the Hurricane Festival, they took him in for the surgery.
Got it. Okay. So no one even really knew that it was as serious as it was.
No. I mean, we knew something was up, and we knew it wasn't good, but nobody had any idea.
Right.
How bad.
And towards the end, I'm assuming you kept in touch with David throughout the next several years?
Yeah, the last time I was in touch with David was October of 2015, which was about, 3 or 4 months before the end.
Yeah. Did you know the end was that close?
I didn't know he was sick.
Oh, okay.
No. I mean, I found out when they made the announcement on the middle of the night that he passed away. I had no idea.
Oh, okay. So he didn't, no one let you in on that?
No, and you know what? I understand that in a position that he's in, that do you really want to put your family through months, if not a year or two, of insane bullshit coming from the press? You know what I mean? The family's got to have some privacy. He did the right thing by his family, no doubt.
Oh, look, the way the end came together with the album, the video, the photo shoot, it was amazing. The coordination and
The only guy on the planet that would document his own demise is David Bowie, and he did quite a good job of it.
It's interesting that David documented his own demise, and then back to Yoko, she documented her grief.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, look, I don't want to end on those sad notes, even though we're talking about a blues album here. Yeah. But look, Earl, the album Fistful of Devils, it feels like just a lifetime of memories and music and experiences and soul coming all together. And I want to encourage people to go to schnitzel.co.uk to order a copy. There's only 1,000. It's dark. It's moody. These are ideas that sounds like they've been brewing for years. Earl's made solo albums before, but not like this. It is in a league of its own. So, Earl, I do want to thank you very much for coming on the show. Much appreciated, man.
Hey, man, thank you very much.
Take care. Cheers.
Later, pal.
Later. All right, well, there we go, Mr. Earl Slick. The new album, Fistful of Devils, is available on streaming services now. You can listen right away and head up to get your vinyl copy at Schnitzel Records, schnitzel.co.uk. There's only 1,000 units of Fistful of Devils pressed. Once they're gone, they're gone. So get yours now, schnitzel.co.uk. And a huge shout out and heartfelt thank you to all our patrons from patreon.com/vinyl guide. This includes Shane Robertson, Jed Bedouin, Mark Valoria, Matt Bullis, Katarina, Jay, Tabitha Torrance, Deborah Enos Clark, David Shanks, Brian Kane, William Ryan Baker, Corey Baker, Meadow, Jeremy Price, Rob Freeman, Ryan Nims, Alan Lastufka, Rich Lupescu, Christopher Theus, Leonard Spencer, Rob Giles, Parker Macy, Derek King, TJ, Gene Bartram, Matthew Haraney, Aaron Goodrich, David Zimgrobsky, God, I hope I got that right, Caitlin O'Connor, Sam Cohen, Miguel Alvarez, Carolina Hildago, Patrick Thompson, Eric Lands, KTR, Michael Scholar Jr., Tommy No Shoes, Rusty, Jason, Gregory Plass, Dayton Canley, Bruno Bissonette, Tom Grover Beery, Chuck Boyd, Declan Phoenix, David Wellbeloved, Dan T., Trostles, Kevin Mosher, David Phillips, Reg, Michael Howerton, James DuPont, John Lilliquist, David Messer, Tim Clifford, Jen DiEugenio, Timo Christofferson, Jonathan Maka, Sean Kenny, Nicholas Pilot, Jose Marcel Berto de Souza, muchas gracias, and Sean Kelly. Thank you all so much for being fantastic patrons at patreon.com/vinyl guide. And that is it for this week's episode of The Vinyl Guide. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Please share these episodes on your social media. Tell your friends about the Vinyl Guide podcast. That is hugely appreciated. And of course, you can always leave us super positive reviews on iTunes and every other podcast platform that you guys use. That is always much appreciated. We'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some records, people. Cheers.
That's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Send your thoughts to Nate at thevinylguide.com or follow or tag us on Instagram at Vinyl Guide. Until next time, keep spinning.